From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margalus and Josh Nelson.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of Sox Machine Live. I am Josh Nelson alongside Jim Margalus, as it is June 16th, 2023, as we are streaming live as a pregame show, taking everyone up to the Chicago White Sox against the Seattle Mariners tonight on Apple TV. And it's the West Coast road trip, Jim. It's a little hard to do a live stream at 12:30 in the morning after the White Sox wrap up a game and a series against the Los Angeles Dodgers. But I feel like this is fun. We can try something different here when the White Sox go out west.
Well, especially with the way the White Sox wrapped up their series against the Dodgers, like, would we want to talk about that? If we had a post-game show Sox Machine Live planned, would we have scrapped it and said, let's do a pregame show instead? Because that got more and more depressing as the innings went on.
Yeah, the White Sox losing in 11 innings last night to the Los Angeles Dodgers early morning by a final score of 5-4. And the reason that's depressing, if you went to bed, which I wouldn't blame you with how late some of these games were, especially during the week, especially during school night, the White Sox were up 4-0. And there was a lot of good things about the White Sox in that particular game, Jim, especially the first 5 innings. They hit 4 solo home runs. And I get it. They're solo home runs, but home runs have been lacking from this lineup, and they came from the power sources. Eloy hit a home run, Luis Robert hit a home run, Andrew Vaughn hit a home run, Jake Burger hit a home run, and Dylan Cease was cruising. He struck out 10, and when he left, there were runners on first and second in the 6th inning, but it was a 4-0 game. He held the Dodgers scoreless through 5 innings. So there was a lot of positives that happened. And then the negative stuff.
Stop the count.
Then the negative stuff came out. And we'll talk about that. And we'll also preview as far as we'll be starting this weekend series between the Chicago White Sox and the Seattle Mariners. It doesn't get any easier for the White Sox during this road trip. But one thing that I hope that does carry over into this weekend, and what we saw in the last 2 games against the Dodgers, starting on a good foot here, good vibes, home runs, ball and air offense. I'm a big fan of this, and it's something that caught my attention after the White Sox lost the first game against the Dodgers 5-1. Pedro Grifol said in his post-game conference, when it comes to the offense, there's not much to say. We didn't do much. We had too many grounders. We got to hit the ball in the air, and that warms my heart. Pre-game, because the game was on ESPN, Tim Kurkjian on ESPN mentioned that the White Sox set up screens during batting practice to encourage White Sox hitters to hit the ball in the air. Well, the only ones that took note of that in that game were Jake Burger, as he hit 2 homers, and Luis Robert also hit a home run, but they had 3 home runs in that game. And as I mentioned before, last night, they hit 4 home runs. So they've hit 7 home runs in the last 2 games here. And it's against the Dodgers, which is not an easy team to hit home runs. Could we finally see a power surge from the offense, Jim?
Maybe, just because health is involved, especially with Eloy Jimenez being a central part of it. He's been fine when he's been healthy. He just hasn't been around. So it's a case where when he's there and hitting the ball well, squaring it up, it doesn't all have to be Luis Robert and Jake Burger for the offense. So there are some possibilities here to where it becomes a more normal thing. Andrew Vaughn, we've talked about him all year being a little bit disappointed or perplexed with just exactly the results he's getting, even though at bat to bat, he doesn't look bad. He seems like he's driving the ball. It's kind of funny. Sometimes he'll hit a ball the same way that Jake Burger does, the right center field, after Burger does it, or Luis Robert, the pull field after Luis Robert goes that way. And it just comes up shorter, just all of a sudden it's same launch angle, similar velocity, but 20 feet shorter. And it's, I see him going by the dugout, I picture him thinking what do they have that I don't? And just probably, levers and a little bit of, just a little bit of leverage into that swing to hoist the ball longer. But just he's been trying, and he often gets good results, but he doesn't maybe just have the capacity for 35 home run power that Robert, Jimenez, and Berger have. So, he can join the party, but I think when it comes to homers, it's those three: Robert, Berger, Jimenez. If they're all healthy and they're all in decent rhythm, when because Robert and Berger are both susceptible to swinging at everything and chasing pitches out of the zone and having 3 or 4 strikeout games, and then they shake it off and get back to it. But like when they're all functioning, like there is an element of a powerful offense here. It's just around that, and building offenses that don't have homers in them, I think is the tough part. But I've always been confused about like people complaining about solo homers, because like, what, you want them to be singles? Like, do you want them to 8 hits and score 1 run instead of 4? Like, I've never quite, like, homers aren't the problem. It's everything else around it, like lack of walks, lack of traffic in front of those homers, which is the bigger issue.
Yeah, we would all prefer 3-run homers, right? I mean, that's the ideal. But we'll talk about this. We'll talk about the lineup, especially tonight's lineup against the Seattle Mariners in this first game later in this pregame show. But I'm with you, Jim. Like, again, when Grifol says on Tuesday night after the game, we hit way too many grounders, we got to hit the ball in the air, I thought the offense has responded well. And here's a good example of making an adjustment pregame to encourage hitting the ball in the air. And I think as long as these 4 batters, and with Andrew Vaughn, if it doesn't leave the ballpark, if he could find a gap, we know that he's hit a lot of doubles for the White Sox this season. I think he still leads the team in doubles, though he's tied with Luis Robert. Andrew Vaughn has 19 doubles this year and 9 home runs. That's still a good result. They got to get the ball off the ground. And I go back to this Clint Hurdle quote. It's one of my favorite quotes about baseball. Your OPS is in the air. And more White Sox hitters need to take note of that. And I'm hoping that if these 4 could get rolling here to end June, that it catches on, right? This is the part of the offense that's contagious, that more and more guys start taking note, lay off the low stuff, and try to elevate the ball.
Yeah, it's just a matter of like, are those other guys healthy? Like Andrew Benintendi during the ESPN broadcast, they were talking about it. And I mentioned this when I was on my last time with Dan and Lawrence on 670 The Score in our Friday appearance, asking about Andrew Benintendi and just thinking, like, is it the broken hand that he suffered at the end of the year? Like, is that lingering? Because like, he's not coming close to homers. It's not like he just, hitting them in the wrong places, hitting them in the wrong temperatures to where like they come up 15 feet short. And in June at guaranteed rate field, that ball is gone. Like he's, hitting 280 feet, maybe 300 feet at max right now. And like when he really rips the ball, it's like well foul down the right field line and hooking well short of the wall. So to me, that started coming up more and more in my head. Like, did his hand heal all the way, or did he develop terrible habits coming back from that? Because we've seen that before. Like we've seen the White Sox, like Kelvin Herrera with his foot not getting his velocity all the way back. Joe Kelly with the nerve issue, not, coming back all the way to where he could pitch on back-to-back days. Jeff Keppinger having a shoulder issue in the offseason, having nothing to offer the White Sox. So they've had a habit of like buying guys who ended the year with an injury or had an injury in the offseason and just having no idea what to do with it, which is like a blessing that they didn't sign Michael Conforto, I think. Maybe that's like one case where they said, what, do you want us to sign the hurt guy? And like, okay, I get that one. You're excused. But I had that thought in my head, and then ESPN was starting to drill down on it, and watching him like doing the wriggling his hand out after swings, like and shaking it out, and not maybe that exaggerated, but just in terms of almost like strength testing with his hand. And then like he got hit on the hand with a pitch high and tight, and that exacerbated it. And now I think it's interesting to see that come to the fore, because like Anderson, we can kind of surmise it's maybe his knee, but also maybe he's losing it a little bit too, to where like he's just out of sorts trying to generate power and has nothing going for him right now. But like Benintendi, that's what jumped out to me, is like, oh, ESPN is picking up on this. Are we going to hear more about why Benintendi isn't hitting the ball hard? So like between him, Anderson, Sebi, and Yasmani Grandal at catcher, which you get what you get from them, and then Elvis Andrus at second. Like that's 4 spots to where like I don't think homers are coming, or at least with any regularity. Right. So like it has to be those 4 guys, and maybe like that's where ball in the air only goes so far. I guess Kevin Sheets is another one. He's been in a rut and not helping. But it's such a lopsided offense that basically those four guys have to hit and elevate. And if it goes over the fence and nobody's on, it's like at least it's a run, because who knows if that run is coming otherwise.
Yeah, it's instant offense. That's what it is with the solo home runs, and that's what the White Sox need, because I don't think straining 3-4 hits in a row in an inning is going to happen with this offense.
Or walks.
Or walks, for that matter. And then they don't run. When they get on base, they don't run either. So I think it's all about ball and air right now for the White Sox to try to hit as many home runs as possible. But get it, good. They've hit 7 home runs in the last 2 games. Let's hope that trend continues for the White Sox throughout this weekend. And they'll need it next week at home, especially with the Texas Rangers coming into town. That's one of the best offenses in Major League Baseball. The bad. Can we not trust Reynaldo Lopez anymore? Because he entered the 6th inning in last night's game. And yes, he's inheriting 2 runners on first and second, but he's also inheriting a 4-0 lead. And he coughs it up. He gives up a grand slam to Chris Taylor. And then we see Gregory Santos pitch. And it caught my attention, especially on social media and on Twitter. The Dodgers reporters and content creators and bloggers all were really impressed with the type of stuff that Gregory Santos had. As in, they were a little jealous that, man, the Dodgers could really use Gregory Santos. So the first part, can the White Sox no longer trust Reynaldo Lopez? And second, should the types of situations that Lopez is getting, should those be handed off to Gregory Santos?
Well, I think Santos is going up the leverage ladder. Like, he had a tough inning. Like, he entered a tie game. So he's being saved, I think, for tougher and tougher assignments and doing a decent job with them. So they just have so many high leverage innings. The White Sox do. Like, they play with so slim of leads. Their offense can't be counted on to tack on runs later against the other bullpen. So basically, once the starter leaves, whether the starter pitches 5, 6, 7, like it's go time for those relievers. So it seems like, whether it's, I would say everybody above Garrett Crochet, maybe, like when it comes to like leverage, like Aaron Bummer's, starting to have a decent run here with just, what he's doing, what stuff he's throwing, like on and off, but at least he's back to when he gives up runs, it's because the contact was terrible and is placed in the wrong spot versus walking guys and then giving up rockets. So it looks more like the Bummer we know. And against lefties, like, he comes in, but yeah, maybe above Aaron Bummer. So you're talking about like Joe Kelly, Kendall Graveman, Gregory Santos, Keenan Middleton, and, Reynaldo Lopez. Like, they're all facing tough situations, and then Bummer probably does too. It's just, I think that's part of it, and why, like, Lopez has to come in sometimes just to spare Middleton and Santos, or, an appearance that maybe they don't have to have. But Lopez is just, he's befuddled me all year, just because when he comes out, you don't know if he's going to be throwing 97 or 100. Like, he has some fluctuation in his top end velocity. And it really seems like those 2 ticks make a difference. And it makes sense, just because, like, his breaking ball isn't a killer. Like, he's not going to be somebody who sliders people to death. It's mainly going to be the fastball, attack, and then whoops with the slider and see if he can really, throw him off. And when that fastball is 97, 98 versus 99, 100, very occasionally 101, it's a more hittable pitcher, especially like the fly balls. He's a fly ball pitcher. When he's throwing 99, 100, like, those fly balls are, hit at the top of the bat, and they go either straight up in the air, or if they don't go past the bat, they go straight up in the air or harmlessly into the shallow to mid outfield. When the barrel can get a little bit more out in front, the balls go farther. And I almost wonder if, like, can they set up a radar gun in the bullpen and say, like, hey, Raylo, just air it out here. What do you have? Like, and have like a second reliever warming up to him, next to him the whole time, and say like 97. We'll go with Keenan. Sorry, sit down. For his like 101, like, yeah, you're in. Just because it does seem like when I look at the radar gun and see 97, 96, 98, like, I hope it's on. I hope this batter doesn't count. And unfortunately, Chris Taylor counted.
Yeah, that was Chris Taylor's 100th career home run. His first career home run was a grand slam. His 100th career home run is a grand slam. And yeah, deflated that game for the White Sox. The White Sox don't score the rest of the game as the Dodgers bullpen pitches 6 scoreless innings, and the White Sox end up losing the series. So staying with that game, though, the good, Dylan Cease quietly is on a roll. Now, he's not pitching deep into games. He just went 5 1/3 against the Dodgers as he threw 102 pitches to get that far, where he allowed 4 hits, 2 earned runs, and those 2 earned runs were part of that grand slam. 3 walks, 10 strikeouts from Dylan Cease. And in the month of June, in 3 starts, Cease's monthly ERA is now 2.16 with 23 strikeouts to 8 walks in 16 2/3 innings. He's only allowed 10 hits. He's only allowed 4 earned runs in his last 3 starts. Is Cease on a roll here, Jim? I mean, the results are good. Maybe they're not Cy Young Cease good that we saw last year, especially in the month of June where he really ramped it up and he had that no earned runs allowed streak going on. There were some runs allowed because of some errors by him and his defense, but he had that no earned run streak going on last year. And right now in June, he's throwing the ball well.
Yeah, I think it's a return to 2021 Cease, in which, like, the 2 numbers that jump out to me from that start are he topped out at 97.1 miles per hour. I think I have to double check that, but I think that's where he ended up max velocity wise, and 25 foul balls. Just when he's not throwing with as much power as he had last year, it's more balls barely touched, more, making for longer at bats, making for more pitches. And he's not consistent enough with his mechanics to like make that pitch again. So if he has to throw 1 extra pitch, he might have to throw 3 extra pitches because he yanks a fastball out of the zone or pulls a slider, that sort of thing. So that's, I think, what's keeping him from reaching the 2022 form. But I do think, like, the 2021 guy is useful. Like, he was very helpful to that team when he took that step forward and helped them coast to the division title. The other thing is like that it's just, it's the kind of bat missing that the White Sox could use, like with Lance Lynn, struggling the way he is, with Mike Clevenger not missing bats, Lucas Giolito having a good year. Like he's been good, but not like maybe 10 strikeout good. Like he's been back to, just more or less keeping hitters off balance. Like they could use that strikeout guy in the rotation, even if it is, 5-6 innings versus 6-7+ innings that he was able to give the White Sox last year. Just when the White Sox offense doesn't score, that's when you get back to this, bullpen being stressed. So, when we're talking about like the White Sox at the trade deadline and, who they could trade, like I think Cease, when he's in this form, has value just because like give Cease a better offense. And a lot of teams can make use of 5+ to 6 good innings because maybe they're leading by 5 runs and they don't need to use their best relievers for a second consecutive day. They can use the low leverage guy and maybe the offense will tack on more runs against the other team's low leverage relievers. Like if you're looking at, trade value, like then he's in pretty good shape.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like the White Sox are going to entertain that, though. According to MLB Trade Rumors, they put up a story that reportedly the White Sox, if they sell, it'd only be players on expiry contracts. And Dylan Cease is not one of those. But, man, I got to ask that question today on Bernstein and Holmes. Like, who has the most trade value? And I went with Luis Robert, number 1. And Dylan Cease, number 2. Like, those 2 guys have the most trade value, but I didn't think it was likely because circling back to something that you've been talking about, Jim, that the most likely scenario is that the White Sox don't do anything. They just stand pat. That Jerry Reinsdorf doesn't have the appetite for a rebuild, so maybe they don't give up on this season. And they don't have the assets to acquire anybody of significance because their best prospects are hurt. Or they're underperforming. I don't think they're going to entertain the idea of trading Noah Schultz. And Colson Montgomery hasn't played this season. He's dealing with a back injury. I think Brian Ramos just hit his first home run for AA this year. And then you got Oscar Colas, which you might as well hold on to him because he's like 1 injury away from having to come back to Chicago. They just don't have the assets to be significant buyers. So when I got asked that question, I'm now moved into your camp that I think the most likely scenario is that they do stay pat. But other teams, I'm just curious because Rick Hahn always says that they got to do their due diligence, right? They got to listen to every phone call that comes in. I would like to be a fly on the wall and see if a team is bold, maybe a team like the Dodgers, picks up the phone, calls Rick Hahn, and I would just be kind of curious of what that initial offer would be from other teams for someone like Dylan Cease.
It would have to be, I'm trying to think who might be comparable with that kind of, it's the one thing that's tough about Cease is the walk rates. And I could see teams saying like, well, he's just short of elite. He's not going to be a Cy Young guy. That was a lucky year he had in 2022. They're trying to drive down the White Sox asking price a little bit, saying like he could show up and be walking 7 guys per 9 innings with just the kind of ruts he's had going to a different organization, sometimes not just feeling it, not having a pitching coach who knows how to get him back on track just from, Ethan Katz seems to have a deep understanding of him. So that's, I think, the tricky part with Cease is doesn't seem like he's automatic in that, you can just set him and forget him. Like it's a case where he does require a little bit of maintenance and checking on exactly like why, whether he's hitting all his points in his release to have maximum velocity and not have that problem where he throws the ball into the lefty batter's box, because, we've seen that here and there, and we've seen the walks clump up on him, even though he's been pretty good on the whole in terms of not having those walks do too much damage. Just they tend to lead to pitch count issues more than anything else. But that's what I am, curious about. Just the tightrope he often walks with his peripherals. Seems like it's a case where, we've seen him in the postseason briefly. He hasn't done much just because it can snowball on him. And, but on the other hand, like it's not just for this season, it's for next season too. Like he fits it, a lot of teams' rotations just fine. Like every team would love to have a Dylan Cease for 32 starts because he seems to make 32 starts, knock on wood. But reliability has been like his biggest selling point, even when he hasn't been one of the league's best pitchers. When he's been an okay pitcher, he's still made every start. When he's been a bad pitcher, he's made every start. When he's been a great pitcher, he's made every start. And I think that's, if I were the White Sox, that's what I would stress, is that they've never had to worry about him.
I think to your point, as far as like the fear of the walk rate, it depends what organization would trade for him in this hypothetical. If it was like the Dodgers or Astros, I'm expecting like Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander, Garrett Cole type of performance. Like, that walk rate. Yeah, we're going to have to lower the price. Dylan Cease gets off the airplane, sits him down. By the way, we know how to fix your walk rate.
I think your shoes are tied too tight. Try loosening them up a little bit.
Oh my gosh, look at that. I'm striking out 13 per 9 and I'm walking 1.5. Here I go. Like that's what I would expect if he was with somebody else. Have you seen Jake Diekman, by the way, talking about adjustments?
Not in a while, but I was surprised when I heard people complain about him, because when I checked on him for a couple weeks, like he was doing nothing, just like Zach Birdie was doing nothing for the Rays. And I thought, they're just going through bodies right now. And then I saw that he hung around, which Zach Birdie did not.
I think he's had like 5 straight scoreless outings for Tampa Bay. There's a good article, I think, from Baseball Prospectus of what the Rays have done as far as adjustments with Jake Diekman. And
9 in a row.
Yeah, 9 scoreless outings in a row. 7
inherited runners, 7 for 7 in stranding inherited runners. Still walking guys, but 1 hit over 7 innings, 4 walks, 7 strikeouts.
Yep. Damn Rays. All right. So back to the
and
bat.
3 successful looks like 3 successful loogie appearances. Like getting that first lefty out. Yes.
Must be nice. Speaking of lefty relievers, the bad. Garrett Crochet at his fastball velocity last night. His max fastball velocity was 94.6 miles per hour. His slowest fastball, his minimum fastball velocity was 91.9, so 92 miles per hour. From Garrett Crochet, I think the last time he threw that slow of a fastball was his freshman year at Tennessee, Jim. Like, he's been in the mid-90s since his sophomore year at Tennessee, and then he became this flamethrower his junior year, and the White Sox take him in the first round of the 2020 draft, and when they call him up because the White Sox are running out of pitchers in that season, he's hitting 100. And when he came off the injury list, he was hitting 96, 97. His season average before last night was 96.5 miles per hour for the White Sox. Last night, his average fastball velocity is 93.5. Red flags go up, right? We are seeing the average fastball velocity drop by 3 miles per hour in this particular outing. Now, Pedro Grifol at his post-game conference brought the trader out there, talked to Garrett Crochet. Garrett Crochet says that he's fine as they noticed that the fastball velocity dropped. But I'm concerned here, Jim. Like, I don't know if this is necessarily dead arm period for Garrett Crochet, but Garrett Crochet is not good when he's throwing 93, 94. He was not missing bats at all against the Dodgers. And this is something we're going to have to pay close attention to unless he goes on the injured list for a couple of weeks for the White Sox as they give him time to recover. But if they don't put him on the injured list, we got to pay attention to the fastball velocity because you don't want to compound any issues as this guy just came off Tommy John surgery last year.
Yeah, at first I thought it was a case where like, oh, he threw a fair amount of pitches like 2 days before, and I'm looking it up. It was 2 innings, 35 pitches, 25 strikes, and thinking, oh, it's a lot of work for him. Maybe he just had a hard time recovering from it. And then I realized, looking at his game log, like, oh, he's had 41 pitches, 46 pitches in previous outings. You know, more taxing outings, outings where he's walking more batters and fighting himself. And you'd have those kind of velocity issues. The one difference, I suppose, looking at his game log is like after those 40 plus pitch outings, he had one more day off in between. And so I don't know if that has anything to do with it, especially like after his last, or between like the May 31st outing where he threw 27 pitches and he had basically like 9 days off in between to, respond again. So that was the one thing that I thought like maybe it's a little bit of dead arm just because it is a case where like he's pitching with less rest than he's used to after throwing more pitches than he's used to. But it's hard to know because his velocity has been all over the place. We saw that velocity drop in his rookie season, his draft year, portending bad things. And sure enough, he was able to pitch a full season after that. So it wasn't immediate around the corner type thing, but it did eventually catch up to him. And now there was that whole velocity drop in 2022 that wasn't explained. 2021 that wasn't explained. Like he went from throwing 100 in his draft year to throwing like 96, 97 and saying like, well, I may never get that velocity back, and being like, that's weird. That's something that requires a bit more scrutiny, but Tony La Russa was there and the White Sox were doing okay. And there's just between the wins and La Russa consuming so much attention, just never got around to it, never became a problem, never really had to circle back to like, how bad's he hurting? And then like he has Tommy John surgery and such. Now I think it's a little bit more reasonable to be sensitive about velocity drops, just knowing what he's been through and knowing that not every pitcher has a smooth recovery from Tommy John surgery, and it's worth keeping an eye on it. But yeah, it's just, walking a couple batters, like throwing half his pitches for strikes on top of the velocity issues. I mean, like none of it was good. And now it's just a matter of like, will he be able to avoid the injured list? They just put Mike Clevenger on it. So they could have done it if they felt like there was a pressing issue to go on the IL, but we've also seen the White Sox drag their feet and going on the IL. So it'll be worth watching his next outing, both when it comes, like how much rest he gets, and then what he's throwing with his first pitches when he's back on the mound.
Yeah, it goes back to the conversation that so many people have had ever since the White Sox drafted Garrett Crochet. And it happened when I pointed out the fastball velocity last night on Twitter. Should the White Sox send him to AAA and start building him up as a starting pitcher? And I don't think people understand the amount of work that a pitcher has to go through to prove that they could start, that they could handle the workload every fifth day, that they can prove they can maintain their stuff 50, 75, 80, 90, 100 pitches in an outing. It takes time. It takes months. Sometimes it takes seasons. You don't have that time with Garrett Crochet. He's arbitration eligible, I think, next year. This is his last league minimum salary year, and now you got to go to arbitration with him starting next year. Like, you only have 3 more years of control. Like, it's really hard to back up the truck and make an adjustment. I know people, everyone points out the whole Chris Sale story, but again, Chris Sale was a starter in college, right? He was a starter in college. The White Sox took a starting college pitcher and put him in the bullpen. Garrett Crochet was pulled out of the starting rotation at Tennessee his sophomore year. He was this Andrew Miller type. And then he missed a significant amount of time in 2020 to start the year, and then COVID happened. So he never got this opportunity. And if he's got this dead arm period where he's only throwing 93, 94, he's not good. I'm sorry. This is not good. And I don't know where the White Sox go if Garrett Crochet cannot get back to 97, 98. I think that is more important to the White Sox as far as their success than trying to figure out if Garrett Crochet could go 50 plus pitches. Like, I would just try to make him a Josh Hader type now instead of, I don't know what they're doing with Garrett Crochet, to be honest with you.
Well, I think I know what they're doing in that he's been a reliever and they hoped he'd be like a, like Andrew Miller type, like you said, high leverage guy, Josh Hader type, who can throw 2+ innings and it feels like doom when he enters a game. He's had stretches like that. He's had moments, but he's also had like very little development at the, just professional level. It's been all at the major league level. He's been getting by. And it's fine. Like the reason I don't want to see him stretch out, aside from like the general skepticism that it won't work and just that he's never proven he can. And thus like, it's very, very hard for him to do it without like showing he has a third pitch and showing that like he has the stamina endurance to make it work. Like it just, he's fine. He's fine as a reliever. Like I don't want Carson Fulmer to happen again where he's a starter. No, he's a reliever. Well, maybe he's a starter. No, he's and just, they couldn't figure out what he was, how to pitch. He didn't know how to pitch from how he tells it. Like he was going along with everybody said, kind of lost his identity. Mm-hmm. Like Garrett Crochet has an identity. I guess it feels a little bit silly to use a 11th overall pick on him. Like I was trying to think it was 11 or 13th, but like 11th. It feels a little bit silly. Yeah. But my defense of that is it was the COVID year. You don't know exactly how players are going to develop. Like he feels like a sure thing somehow for the major league bullpen and a good reliever, even with the 11th pick being a little bit of a reach. Like at least it's something with so much uncertainty swirling around. Like I get it for that year. So you may as well just take that median outcome for a, 11th round or 11th overall pick, like, in that territory. Like he's going to have a nice career. Unless, I guess we'll find out after his next outing, like if he's all the way back from Tommy John surgery, but assuming like he's just going through the normal bumps of coming back from Tommy John surgery, both with command and maintaining velocity and such, like he should be fine. He should be like somebody who maybe makes an all-star game one year because he gets on a run and puts up great numbers against lefties. Like teams should want him. He should hang around. Like he should have a 10-year career, I'm guessing, just, with his abilities and, how he throws. So like it's, when you look up the total wins above replacement for that draft year, like he's not going to stand out as a weird, pick or like, showing nothing. So I think it's just better to accept that and more or less shrug like, I guess it was just, a little bit of a whiff because like there's just been a lot of issues in that draft, like top 10, like it's so, especially on the pitching side, I think there's been a lot of uncertainty with just, how guys responded to missing all that time. So that's why I'm not really concerned about getting more out of Crochet. Just let him be a good reliever. That's who the White Sox picked, and that's fine.
We got this comment from Timothy in our YouTube stream. For those the podcast listeners, we are streaming live on YouTube. And he put in the comment section, looking forward to the 2030 article about how Crochet, then on his 7th team, coming clean with how the White Sox had no idea what they were doing with them, so used him in every wrong way. Yeah, well, we're still waiting for Carson Fulmer to light it up, I guess.
I want to know what happened to his butt. Garrett Crochet, like did he spend his entire time doing squats? Like as far as like, he really seemed like he tried to like build himself up to be like, that's why like the velocity dropping is like, man, he just spent so much time working on his trunk and it's not, if the velocity is not holding after all that, like, where do you go from there?
That is a great question. Where we are going to go from there is let's talk about this series this weekend. The series preview of the Seattle Mariners as the Chicago White Sox visit Seattle. And adding a new feature here as we are using StreamYard. Let's read up the standings in Major League Baseball. The White Sox are 30-40. They're 5.5 games back before they play tonight on the Minnesota Twins, as the Twins are taking on the Detroit Tigers this weekend, with the Twins at 35-34. Seattle, if they were in the American League Central, like a lot of teams in the American League, they would be a little bit happier about themselves, as Seattle is currently 33-34, but they're 8.5 games back at Texas, and they're 5 games back of the wild card. They're in 4th place in the American League West. They have been playing much better at home. They're 19-16 this season, but Seattle came into this season with some expectations as they made the postseason last year to see if they could do it again. But right now they are in 4th place in the American League West behind the Texas Rangers. And Jim, for the Seattle Mariners team, I guess you could say they are underachieving. Well, we kind of saw this last year where they had a slow start and then they caught on fire in the summertime. And Seattle never stands pat, especially the trade deadline. Like, I think if they don't make 2 trades before the deadline, something has gone wrong with the Mariners front office. So I think Seattle's got a run in them. But what do you make of the Mariners so far in the first half of this season?
I think they have a lot of dead weight. When you look at some of the guys they've acquired to solve positions like AJ Pollock, weird DH. Like, it's strange having watched what he had to offer the White Sox, while you sometimes trust that the White Sox did something wrong when they get such a colossal underperformance. Like, kind of looks like he's done, like, in terms of just, batting 167, 53 OPS plus, not a whole lot going on there. Like, and he's their DH, or he's, their primary, DH when it comes to getting those at bats. Like Colton Wong, who is a very popular figure in the offseason plan project, kind of looks like Cesar Hernandez, somebody who, like, if he can just be like 90% of the player he was, he'd be great. He'd be what the White Sox need. Then he's just not able to deliver anything of what he had. And, he's been a mess. So, like, between those two guys, it's just a whole lot of nothing. And then, like, Suarez having down year, and just, they aren't responding with like the kind of huge years elsewhere. Like, they have some promising performances. Like Kelenic, it finally looks like he's somebody who's regular, and, Rodriguez is having a little bit of a slump. It looks like he's having to battle some adjustments, but there is a possibility like those guys figure it out, and they just, as you mentioned, Dipoto solves the positions that aren't working. But I think right now they're just battling. The pitching seems like it's fine, a little bit lumpy in the rotation because of guys missing time, but they're pretty good at generating relievers, so they should be fine on the pitching side. Just more, I think, not scoring enough runs and having like just outages up and down the lineup that make it hard to when you're not getting those premium performances that they got last year from some guys.
Brian Wu will be making the start for the Seattle Mariners. This would be the first time that I have seen him pitch. The lineup for the Chicago White Sox tonight: Tim Anderson still batting leadoff, even though his OPS is 586. Andrew Benintendi batting second at the lack of power. Luis Robert batting third. Andrew Vaughn batting seventh, which is odd to me. Elvis Andrews will be batting eighth at second base, and Semi Zavala has the rear as the catcher, batting ninth. Jim, why is Tim Anderson still batting leadoff?
I have some ideas, but the honest answer is I don't know. I guess the speculative answer is, one, I guess there's no natural candidate. Maybe Andrew Benintendi, since he's not hitting for power, like get on base, run a little, then move, put Benintendi atop the lineup, move everybody else one. So you have Benintendi, Robert, Jimenez, Berger, Vaughn, or if you want to balance left, right, you maybe have Sheets in front of them, but basically you just have Anderson, bump him down to 7th through 9th, move everybody up one, and go with that lineup. Like that's probably fine. And should work, but there is nobody who can, like, if you want to preserve everybody else in the order, there's nobody else who's going to, slot in the way Elvis Andrus did last year in Anderson's absence and be fine. Like, be an unusual leadoff man, maybe be a low OBP guy, but hit with enough power and steal enough bases to make up for some of those bases you're not getting with walks and, average. And there's nobody that would show that kind of effectiveness there. So I think that's maybe the generous answer. The ungenerous answer, or the skeptical, cynical answer, is just like, he doesn't want to upset the team, or he doesn't want to, like, he thinks it's crossing some kind of red line that he doesn't have the authority to cross or something. But I think it's the quote, Daryl Van Schouwen related in his notebook article, saying Grifol has said he has given no thought to moving Tim Anderson from the leadoff spot where he was hitless in his last 15 bats. Quote, because I know at any given day he could start feeling really good. We've got 92 games left. He could get 120 hits the rest of the year. I don't react that way. And like, when it's 92 games left, that's not a whole lot of games. Mm-hmm. Like usually you hear that quote when, like, oh, we got 5 months left, or we got 130, or we have 100 plus. Usually it's a triple digit number when you're specifying the number of games. 92 feels like not a lot of games. Like, I don't recall hearing that. Maybe it's just a case of, like, the struggles haven't been so severe, but it feels like that's just finger crossed. There's no reason to feel like Anderson's rounding a corner. Like, he's not hitting the ball hard. He's not drawing walks. Like, he's not doing anything well that makes you think the results aren't there. The results aren't there because everything going into the results aren't there. And, Jose Abreu's finally turning it around in June. Like, he's finally showing it. Like, he's living up to the back of the baseball card. We'll see if it's a hot streak or whether it's, he's just doing the usual thing he does of dragging his numbers back to above water. But, like, at least he's doing it. Like, Anderson's getting further away in June. Like, there's no signs here that he's going to figure it out. Like, and whether he needs to sit and get fully healthy or do something, like, the contact isn't there. And there is no reason to think it's going to be there. And Grifol doesn't even try to create that defense. He's just like, well, maybe it'll get better. And, when he said, I don't react that way, like, yeah, as I wrote, you could take the last two words off that. Like, I don't react. That's how it looks right now. It's just like, I feel nothing. I'm just here. I might be going down with the ship if there's front office overhaul. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, he's kind of locking up. That's kind of what it feels like to me. And I don't want to say that just because, like, I don't know, there could be valid reasons. Like, we're far enough away that, it feels like a little bit knee jerky to say, he's locking up, but it is inaction when some kind of act, even for like a game, would be warranted. Like, even just for like a couple games, like, let's see how this works. Let's shake it up. Even if it's just, sitting Anderson for 3 games in a row or something like that, just, even if you don't want to, like, have him bat anywhere else, just try something, but just a day off, back at it, batting atop the order. And that's just showing, like, a lack of, it's not caring. Like, he's got to care, like, given how hard he's worked to get this job, like, he's got to care, but, like, it almost, strikes me as, like, fear. Like, what if I do something wrong? Doing nothing is better than doing something wrong. And I don't believe that, but that's just how, one, I don't believe that would be true, but also, like, I don't necessarily know if that's his thinking, but it certainly comes off that way, especially when just like I said, the results aren't there. Nothing under the results are there.
So during his interview process and during his introduction press conference, he mentioned that he believes in numbers, that they will help influence decision-making, and then he'll reevaluate lineups every 7 to 10 days. I don't buy that anymore for Pedro Grifol when you're consistently batting a guy who's got a 586 OPS as your leadoff hitter. Like, come on.
It's Alcides Escobar. It's Ned Yost. I mean, maybe he learned under Ned Yost.
That's exactly what it is. This is like Mike Matheny, Ned Yost, bad Kansas City managing coaching. Like, my dude, you're losing me here, Pedro. Like, and we're just at game 70 of his managerial career. This is just baffling to me. And I think it's like it's shooting the White Sox in the foot. The White Sox are hitting a bunch of solo home runs. You know why? Because no one's on base when Luis Robert bats in the first inning. And if he crushes the hated slider, that's awesome. It's a home run for Luis, but Anderson and Benintendi can't get on base consistently. It's just baffling to me that the White Sox consistently are batting someone who is an OPS below 600 leadoff. Logically, that doesn't make any sense to me, Jim.
Especially since he's getting farther away. That's what's frustrating me. It's not like he's got a terrible OPS because he's awful in April, and now he's finally starting to show signs that it's coming around, and just stick with him. He'll get there. They're sticking with him, and there are no rewards for doing so. And we've gotten some good comments in the queue about from As and Rex saying, is anyone going to remember Pedro Grifol 10 years from now? And that question reminds me of I think Pete, Mr. Hand, we've talked about it, trying to compare White Sox managers to Blackhawks coaches. And it seems like, if the White Sox churn through some managers like Blackhawks did coaches, right now, I think Pedro Grifol is kind of like Jeremy Colleton to me, of just somebody, who's got some new ideas, is going to take this veteran lineup and really show them how to, instill this new kind of life and analytics-based approach. And no, he just doesn't have the skills to get the job done. He's not, he doesn't have the, just the effect on a roster to impose his will on a organization, on a roster just kind of falling apart, or giving way to age and dysfunction, and maybe a front office that doesn't have an eye. Another comment we got just saying about from David saying that Tim Anderson doesn't have a strictly an opposite field approach like he did, and I don't think he had a strictly opposite field approach. I think the strictly opposite field approach came last year after the groin injury, when he couldn't really turn on the ball. When he's fully functioning, he settles for singles to right field, but he can pull the ball in the air. He can rip mistakes to the pull field. And I think that's when he's at his best, is when they're not giving him anything to hit, dink, there's a single to right field. But when they hang a slider, when he sees a fastball and a fastball count, he can either, crush the ball to right field and get that guaranteed right field boost from the wind tunnel going that way, or he can just rip it down the left field line. He has all fields ability, but we're not seeing any of that. And I think he's trying to tap into that because I think the home run drought's probably getting to him, but his opposite field contact is weak too. So I think it's just the barrel isn't getting to where it needs to be. And I wonder if he just doesn't know how to get it there right now.
Well, watch. He has a 3 home run game today against Brian Boone. That would help. That would help. But right now, I'm baffled that they're not even contemplating moving Tim Anderson down the lineup. I don't know what to say. You're 10 games below 500. You still think you're contending in the American League Central. You kind of need to optimize the lineup to score as many runs as possible. This season is not about Tim Anderson. This season's about all 26 guys in that clubhouse trying to dig out the hole that they dug themselves in the month of April. And if he's not helping, you need to move on. It's just that simple. It's baffling to me, Jim. It's baffling. He better have a good weekend, because if he doesn't, we're going to be talking about this on Monday in the next Sox Machine podcast.
One question, since Clutch Hat Trick in the comments, who homers first, Tim or Benintendi?
Oh man. I'm gonna go.
I already missed my window for Benintendi. I thought he was gonna homer in Yankee Stadium, but not even close. So I think I'm gonna say Anderson, just because I think he has the hand strength to get it over. He doesn't have the leg strength, but he has the hand strength. I think Benintendi, if his hand really is bothering him, that's really hard to hit for anything there. You can't even luck into one with a good wind and the right amount of launch angle, a ball coasting out when you're hitting the ball like Benintendi is. So I think I'm with you there.
Yep. Before my voice completely gives out, I really appreciate everybody joining us for this special edition of Sox Machine Live, as the Chicago White Sox and Seattle Mariners will be having their first pitch in 5 minutes on Apple TV. So make sure that you go over to Apple TV on your smart television or on your smart devices to be able to watch tonight's game. We'll be tweeting along, which you can follow us on Twitter. We are at Sox Machine. You can follow me on Twitter at SoxMachine_Josh. For those that have watched the live stream, please subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. And we always take the audio versions of Sox Machine Live and upload it into the podcast feed, which you can subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you enjoy our work, you can get more by signing up at patreon.com/Sox Machine, where we have monthly plans starting at $2, where you get exclusive content, ad-free versions of both the podcast and the website. And when we have new Sox Machine swag, you can be the first ones to receive it at the Sox Machine store. Again, sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. Sox Machine Live is a production of SoxMachine.com, your home for all things Chicago White Sox baseball, and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margalus, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for watching and listening.